guys, my name is Chelsea and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we have my February wrap-up. So, sort of surprising to me even, I read 22 books in February. Like, I doubled my January reading, not only in the number of books, but also page number. I read like 2,000-ish pages in January. And in February, I read 4,954 pages. Like almost 5,000 total pages in 28 days. When in January we had 31. I don't quite know how it happened, but it did, and I'm very, very happy about it. So I am going to let you guys know a little bit of stats, and then we will jump into the actual reviews, going from the lowest to the highest. For the format of my books, I did read 1 audiobook, 3 ebooks, 6 ARCs, and 12 physical books. And then for the age categories that I read 2 middle grade, 6 young adult, 1 new adult, and 13 adult titles. So in the month of February, I did actually have 1 DNF, 4 3 stars, 2 3.5 stars, 3 4 stars, 2 4.5 stars, and 10 5 stars. I had a really, really good reading month. So like I said before, we are going to be starting down at the DNF. One thing I did want to mention, and I will tell you guys when I get to those books, but I did actually read 8 books on camera during 2 vlogs for the Demonathon. So I will leave both of those vlogs linked down below for you. I will give more in-depth thoughts on books that I read for those, obviously. I will still give some thoughts here, but in-depth thoughts, definitely go check those out. So my DNF for February is Big Bad Wolf by Suleika Snyder. This was a book that I was so excited for, and I did purchase it in January, and I just could not get into it. It was my very first read of February. I tried so hard to get into it, but it is a paranormal romance, but it is definitely not my type of romance. The main guy character of Joe, on page 9, starts basically objectifying our female character. It's supposed to be some sort of fated mates situation, but he literally is talking about like how her boobs will fit in his hands. There was never anything in the 71 pages that I read of him appreciating her for her, like her brain or being a human being. It was all about her body and how fuckable it was, and I do not want that. Like, he is definitely not a character I could get behind, especially in a romance. I did not want to listen to anything from him. I was not interested in those sexy times, and I do actually have a video where I talk about my experience reading some romances being demisexual. Again, I will leave that link down below. And I didn't specifically mention this book by name, but this is definitely the type of romance that I do not prefer, because I don't feel like it is progressing in like a typical romance format. It was definitely going more erotica format in that sort of stuff. Like, every single thing about their relationship was sex related. And so I do not own this anymore. It's not even gonna necessarily be in an unhaul video, which I will actually have coming out in March, because it is time to do that. Because I had this book for less than a week. I bought it, I read as much as I could, and within a few days it went back to be traded out for a different book because it is just not my thing. Now we're gonna move into the 4 3 stars. The very first one I have here is Hello Moto by Nnedi Okorafor. This one I did talk about in the Demonathon vlog. It is a very, very short story, only 16 pages according to Goodreads, and it is about women who have a mix of technology and magic in their wigs, and it sort of, I guess, makes them go bad. I just needed more from this story. I liked how it ended because I did see some reviews where people complained a little bit about how abrupt the ending was, but besides that, I really did not understand what we were supposed to get from these characters, because it was supposed to be about them changing personalities a little bit, but like we never got to see them before the wigs either, so it was just not something that fully clicked for me. If it was a longer story, I bet I would have loved it so much more. Then I have Quincredible by Rodney Barnes. This actually was an e-arc that I had. The book came out on February 23rd. It is a graphic novel comic bind-up potentially about Quinn, who ends up having superpowers, and this was just sort of middle of the road for me. It felt very typical for the like new superhero learning how to do his powers aspect, but it was also a little bit weird in some of the characterization. Quinn is very much a typical teenage boy, and he's very concerned about this pretty girl at school, and so a lot of the stuff while he's learning to use his powers is taken away from like why he wants to use his powers and put more into the pretty girl at school. She also has a current boyfriend called Big Baby, like that's his name. I don't fully understand, but I did like the aspects of like racism and classism in New Orleans, because that is where this story takes place. So I felt it could have been a little bit better. I don't know if it was the whole superhero origin story aspect that I didn't like as much, but that is part of it. I don't think I read enough superhero type stories, and so it was okay. The next one I gave 3 stars was The Delta Anomaly by Rick Barba. This is a Starfleet Academy novel, so a young adult version of Star Trek. And like I said, I gave it 3 stars mostly because it didn't quite feel like a Star Trek novel for me. The characters didn't really feel like the characters that we know and love. And again, this is supposed to be from the 2009 movie verse, not necessarily the original series, but the characters just did not sit right with me. Also, the mystery, while it was sort of intriguing, we didn't really get any answers. The ending just sort of ended and left it really far open, like we didn't actually get concrete answers. And so while it could be that they're trying to do a cliffhanger for later in the series, I don't know, and I was just disappointed in that aspect. The last one we have for 3 stars is The Last True Vampire by Kate Baxter. This is the first in a paranormal romance series with vampires. This also has the fated mate trope in it, like Big Bad Wolf that we talked about before, but I do feel like this one is less insta-lust, a little bit more insta-love. I did feel it a little bit more for both of the main characters in here. We have Claire and Mikhail, but I did not like Mikhail. He was very jealous and possessive and aggressive, and he constantly calls Claire female, which, why? I don't see why she was attracted to him whatsoever. The world building in this world is intriguing because he is literally the last vampire in this world. He is like the bearer of this collective memory that vampires have, and so he has interesting magic sources. The vampires, while typical vampires are not exactly the same, they have a like science to them. I did like that aspect, but his actual character, I don't like him as a person. I didn't really like the sort of romance elements that we had. Also, there is a surprise pregnancy in here. There's a lot of torture in here as well, so keep that in mind. Middle of the road for me because I was just sort of expecting more. I did like it better than the other paranormal romance though. So then moving up to 3.5 stars, we have Rogue Planet by Cullen Bunn. This is another e-arc that I had. This one actually just came out on March 2nd, and this is another graphic novel type of book. This is a mix between sci-fi and horror, and while the art style I really did enjoy and it definitely has horror elements, I was a bit confused. I personally needed more answers, and we did have a character who was trying to give us those answers. Like, she was trying to be, I guess, the voice of what was going on, but everything was still so vague by the end that I didn't feel it come together. So while I did like certain aspects of it, and it is definitely a 3.5, not a 3, I just, again, needed a little bit more. And then my other 3.5 is A Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This I did talk about during my Demonathon vlog, so definitely check that out. But this is a fantasy romance. And this follows Luella, who is 19, and she has found out that she is the human queen. Every like 100 years, the elves come and take the human queen, who is a human that actually has magic, to the elven realm so that they can like keep the magic going, sort of thing. And usually they find the human queen by around 16 or 17 years old, and then they get trained on how to be a queen before they go. But Luella's magic was not really working the right way, and so she found out at 19, and there were some aspects that I really enjoyed. The world building here was very intriguing. I did like Luella as a character. She's a very strong character, especially since she never really had any of that queen training. So I did like those aspects. The writing was very easy to get into. Like, I definitely want to check out more of Elise Kova's work, but the actual like romance elements, it felt sort of formulaic. Our elf king felt very closed off and high and mighty, and nobody has ever told him no before. And then Luella comes along and questions him, and he's shocked that this happened. Also, it's a fantasy romance, but I didn't feel like there was a whole lot of plot. Like, I really wish there was a little bit more going on. So 3.5 stars. Moving into the 4-star range, we have Starcrossed Volume 1 by Junko. This one is a manga, an advanced reader copy that I received, and it came out on February 16th. This one, I actually have read other stuff by Junko before. I've read almost the entire series, or I think it might have been the entire series, of Kiss Him, Not Me, and while that does have some problematic elements regarding body types, fat versus thin, this one I felt didn't really have any of that problematic stuff that I saw yet, but I did not actually know what I was getting into when I read this book. I literally requested it because of the author, not because of the actual story. But I'm still glad that I read it because it was a fun ride. This basically follows Azusa, who is like the #1 fan of Chikashi, who is a like singer in a pop band, like, you know, J-pop sort of stuff. And she and him end up dying at a concert, but they weren't supposed to die, and they get brought back to life, but they're in the wrong bodies. And stuff ensues from there. It was a very fun ride. I definitely want to read more in this series because I need to know what's going to happen. And then the next 4-star reads are actually the first 2 volumes of Silver by Stefan Frank. So we have Volume 1 and Volume 2. I actually read the entire 4-volume collection of this series this month, but they got better with each volume. Volume 1 is actually a reread from a couple years ago, and then I decided to continue with them, and I really, really enjoyed this series. This is basically about a con man who gets together a team, and they're going to go and steal silver bars from Dracula. Like, yes, the Dracula. This takes place in the 1930s. Like I said, we have the con artist. We actually have Van Helsing's granddaughter as one of the characters. We have a young boy who can like see into the future. We have a couple like just sort of old guys that the con artist used to work with. It was just a really, really fun ride. And like I said, as we get further into the series, the more and more I enjoyed it. I loved the ending. So I guess I should just talk about that now. First 2, 4 stars. Volume 3 and 4, 5 stars. I absolutely love this. There were actually some twists and turns in the last volume near the ending that I did not see coming, and I really, really enjoyed this. The ending of Volume 4 also left it a little open-ended at the end, so if they decide to do more books in this series, I definitely need to do this. There is a prequel graphic novel about Rosalind, who is Van Helsing's granddaughter, so I definitely need to pick that up as well. But they left it open-ended at the end of Volume 4 for future stuff as well, and I definitely need to do that. I should show you some of the art because it is like a black and white noir style, and it was not my thing when I first picked up Volume 1 a few years ago, but it fits this so well. I loved these. Okay, and then moving into the 4.5 stars, we have Hungry Daughters of Starving Mothers by Alyssa Wong. This is another like group read that I read for Demonathon. However, I actually read it at the very beginning of the month when we were doing the scavenger hunt for the prompts because I did not realize it was a group read, which is why I read Hello Moto later in the month because I realized I should not be reading those early. But I did really enjoy this one. This is very dark. We have some trigger warnings for like stalking and murder, and I can't really get into it too much because it is a short story. It is longer than Hello Moto, which was 16 pages. I think this one's closer to 20 something, but it just like attached itself to me, and while I did still want a little bit more because it was a short story, I really, really enjoyed it. It is very dark. I loved it. And then another 4.5 stars, we also have The Arctic Incident by Owen Colfer. This is the second book in the Artemis Fowl series. I definitely did read this one for Demonathon, so you can find more thoughts there. But this is a reread. I have read Artemis Fowl multiple times since the first one came out when I was 11 years old. And I really do like this one. I like the first book better, which is why this is a 4.5. Mostly because I do love the writing style, I love the characters, but there is an element in here where they sort of introduce the bad guys to the reader and we get a little bit of like their point of view, and that takes away from like the suspense elements for me. Like I really just wish we would not have had those point of views and the story would have been a little bit more like fast-paced for me, but I still really enjoy this one. Then we're moving into our 5 stars. The first one I have here is The Wickeds by Gail Forman. This is a short story from the Amazon collection. I think I've been reading these as audiobooks for the last couple months where I've gotten some put in there, and this is my favorite one of the series so far. I absolutely love this one. This follows the like evil mothers and stepmothers of Snow White, Cinderella, and Rapunzel, and it basically goes through them trying to go after to get like revenge on their daughters, and explains exactly why they have such a bad rap. And I did not know what to expect with this, and it just kept getting better and better. This does have trigger warnings for rape for sure, but it was so good. Also, it follows the Grimm brothers fairy tales. I think all of the fairy tales are from the Brothers Grimm. I don't fully know, but like the original fairy tales, the dark fairy tales. These are not Disney fairy tales. It was revolutionary. It was so good for a short story, because I think this one's only like 40 or 50 pages. It was so good. Then we talked about Silver already, so we are moving on to Those Not So Sweet Boys by Yoko Nogiri. This one I absolutely loved. It feels like a very typical shoujo manga reverse harem type of story. Girl is making friends with these guys, but I just really enjoyed it. This one follows Midori, who has a part-time job after school, which she's not supposed to have, and when her principal finds out, he decides to sort of let her off the hook if she will go get these 3 not so sweet boys, the like bad boys at school, and convince them to come back to school. And I just absolutely loved the characterization. You get to see that they're not really all that bad. I loved the like friendship group coming together, and I definitely need more in this series. Then I read Wolfsong by TJ Klune. Again, this is part of the Demonathon, so I have that in that vlog, but this is one that I really enjoyed. It is quite dark. There is torture and murder and a lot of stuff going on. It's not a higher 5 stars, like it's not higher on this list because of the fact that there is the sort of age gap element. One thing I will say is I'm really happy that no romantic stuff actually happened until like the boys were much older, but there is a 5-year age gap between the boys. But this book is like the epitome of found family. I absolutely loved those elements. The writing style is a little bit weird because we follow our main character of Ox, who is not that bright. He talks about this multiple times, but I liked how it came together. It was a very easy read, even though it is very dark. It is like a paranormal, I don't even necessarily want to say paranormal romance, because while there is romance, I don't feel like that is the main point of the book, but I really did love it. I cried. It has a lot of feelings. Then I read Lock Every Door by Riley Sager. This was actually a buddy read with Rye from Rye's Reading Corner. I will leave her channel link down below. And this was such a fun buddy read. I've never actually read a thriller as a buddy read before, but it fits so well because we had like little theories going on, things that we would catch from different parts that the other person might not have thought of, and we still never saw the ending coming. This, I know I shouldn't say that I did this, but I was comparing it to Home Before Dark the whole time I was reading it. Mostly because I read Home Before Dark last year, and so far now, with reading this one, I've read every single Riley Sager that has come out. I'm very excited for the next one that's coming out this year as well. But that one I gave 5 stars. And I did give this one 5 stars as well. But I was comparing it because a lot of people either love Lock Every Door or Home Before Dark as their favorite Riley Sager. And I was comparing it because one of the things that I loved so much about Home Before Dark was all the twists and turns, and like it did not pull any punches, and it was just like, we're gonna do this and then this and then this and this, and I couldn't catch anything coming. And so while this one didn't have as many twists and turns, it was still twisted and I definitely loved it because I did not see that ending coming. But it definitely has a sort of different twists and turns going on because of the fact that it's not throwing so much at you at once to like surprise you. It definitely has a weird and twisted ending, but it's not in the way that I was expecting it to be told, but it's still just like, oh, I couldn't believe it. And yes, I love this one. Then we have the first Artemis Fowl by Owen Colfer. Like I said, I reread the first 2 books, so this is the first one. I did read these during Demonathon, so they are in the vlog, but this is a reread. I've read this multiple times, and this one I absolutely love. I love the characters, especially Artemis Fowl. He's a 12-year-old, like, evil genius. I really, really loved rereading it now as a 31-year-old adult and seeing all the foreshadowing stuff going on because, like I said, Artemis Fowl is a kid evil genius, and he has a plan, like almost from page 1, that when you're first reading this, it's really hard to pick out. But when you know exactly what's going to happen, it comes together so beautifully, like, oh, so well done. Then I read The Castle School for Troubled Girls by Alyssa Scheinmel. This is another one that I read during Demonathon, and I truthfully wasn't fully sure what my rating was going to be when I first started this book. I did not think I was going to give it a full 5 stars. I fell in love with this book. This book follows Moira as her parents end up sending her to the castle school because they don't really know quite what to do with her after her best friend has passed away. And this is 100% a book about grief. I went into it almost thinking there was going to be some sort of like mystery aspect, and that is sort of there, but it is nowhere near the level of there-ness that I thought it was going to be. But oh my gosh, the actual emotions in this story. I cried so many times, like I want to say at least 4 or 5 times. It really got to me, and I haven't lost a best friend like that, but I have lost people, and it hit me hard. Now, what I will say is this book also has other characters in it that are not the main focus whatsoever, because Moira is the focus, but they are in her life and they are dealing with their own issues at the castle school, and I do not know how well done the representation is for those other girls because they are all dealing with different issues. We have anorexia and cutting and ADHD and OCD and drug and alcohol addiction. There's a lot of stuff going on, and we do get a little bit from each girl, and I really did like that personally, so we got a little bit from them, but again, I don't know how to talk about their experiences in a way that sounds good. Just keep in mind, I guess, for trigger warnings or content warnings, there is that stuff in the book. However, most of it is about Moira's grief. Then I also read The Project by Courtney Summers. This is another one that, like, the emotions of it got to me. I had a great reading month in February. This was also an arc that came out on February 2nd. I loved this. This one follows Lo, who her sister is part of a cult, and she's basically trying to do her own research into proving that this group that her sister is part of is actually a cult. She works at like a newspaper or a magazine or something like that, and she is trying to prove this. This book is so messy. The characters are so gray. There is like no black and white. I loved how it came together. And if you've read this book, that ending, like, why would Courtney Summers do this to us? I mean, she also wrote Sadie, which I feel is very similar in like the messiness of everything and the feelings that it gave me. I love this book. I need for sure to get a copy. And then last but not least, my favorite book of February. Can you believe I just talked about those other books and they weren't even necessarily my favorites? Song of Blood and Stone by Elle Penelope. This is a fantasy romance that I did also talk about during the Demonathon because I read it in the vlog. I love this. It doesn't have quite the like emotions the last couple of books had, because this is, while it is a fantasy with like hard topics, I feel like it is definitely a little bit more fun and hopeful, probably because of the romance elements as well. But I really love this one. This follows a world where there's 2 warring nations basically. We have Elsira, who is basically entirely populated by white people with red hair, and Lagrimar, who are black. and they are separated by a magical mantle because in Lagrimar, the like king guy tries to take the Earth Song of his people to attack the Elsirens, and only black people have Earth Song. So it does have racial commentary in here, but it was so well done. I loved our characters. We got points of view from Jasminda and Jack, but not only them, we also got Ella and Ben, and there's another like element in here that I can see going into further books in the series because there are going to be 4 books total. The first 3 are out and I actually own the first 2, so I definitely need to continue in this series because I loved how it came together. Some people might say it came together a little bit too easily, but they have a high importance of religion in here, and it's not just one religion, there's a couple different religions that characters have importance in, and I do feel like maybe that is why everything actually just came together so easily because of those like divine intervention-esque sort of stuff. But I absolutely loved it. This one is not nearly as dark as some of the others that I read this month, but in the first 100 pages or so, there is an attempted rape, and there's also a maternal death during childbirth. So keep that in mind for triggers and content warnings, but I absolutely loved this. I loved the characters. I loved the writing. It was so quick and easy to get into. I have to read the rest of the series. I think that's one of my goals for this 2021 because I think the 4th book comes out in like August. Trying to read this series because I loved this one so much. And then that was everything from February. Hopefully this video is not too long because I did not want to dwell on everything too much because I do that sometimes. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up to let me know. Subscribe to this channel if you would like to see more videos. I do have videos up Mondays, Thursdays, and sometimes Saturdays. So I will see you then. Bye!